Hello, travelers and monster catchers abound. I'm Stella Ferris, and this is the Monster Catchers Journal podcast. Today's story is about a living stone tablet, a strange and an ancient glyph with the power to glimpse into the future. But such a glyph comes at a terrible price. Those caught in its gaze don't just see time, they feel it. Their bodies aging in an instant, as if the years have slipped through their fingers. Some say it was once an oracle's tool. Others claim it is cursed, forever seeking new souls to feed its hunger for the time itself. It was a chilly evening in Terraformia. The sky stretched deep in deep purples and reds as the twin suns sat in the sky. My class was on another field trip to the Glyph Museum. We took this trip every month, and to be honest, it had lost its thrill a long time ago. The same exhibits, the same lectures, it had all become routine. I trailed behind the group as they shuffled toward the Grand Museum entrance, my breath curling in the crisp evening air. That's when I heard it, a whisper. Faint, almost like the rustling of leaves, yet laced with something otherworldly. I stopped in my tracks, my ears straining. The sound wasn't coming from inside the museum, but from the garden that stretched along its side, a place we never explored. Mostly because the museum guides always rushed us past it. My heart drummed with curiosity, and before I knew it, my feet were moving. The whispers grew stronger as I pushed through the overgrowth path. Past twisted roots and stone benches covered in ivy, and then half buried in the earth at the base of an ancient tree, I saw it. A golden stone tablet, its surface cracked and glowing faintly under the moonlight. Strange symbols etched across it pulsed like a heartbeat, shifting and twisting as if alive. The whispers coiled around me, urging me forward. My breath hitched as I crouched beside it, reaching out with hesitant fingers. The moment my skin brushed the cold, golden surface, the world around me changed. The garden faded, my vision blurred, and then I saw something. Something I wish I never had. The moment my fingers touched the stone's surface, a cold shock ran through me, like icy water rushing through my veins. The whispers turned into a chorus of voices, something urgent, others distant. Speaking in a language I couldn't understand, my vision blurred, the world around me twisting like ink dropped into water. Then suddenly, I was somewhere else. The sky above me was no longer the deep purple of Terraformia's twilight, but in this expanse of shifting gold, streaked with crackling veins of white fire, a vast city stretched before me, its towering structures carved from smooth, radiant stone, humming with an eerie glow. The streets were empty, save for flickering shadows that moved like echoes of people who had once lived there. The air felt thick, heavy with something unnatural, and then I saw them. Figures, hunched and withered, moving sluggishly through the golden streets. Their skin was cracked and dry, their eyes hollow and distant, as if drained of life. They weren't old in the way we think of aging. It was as if time itself had pulled them apart, leaving behind a only brittle husk of what they had been. One of them turned toward me. I couldn't move. Its eyes, what was left of them, locked onto mine. In that instant, a terrible understanding filled my mind. They had seen the future. They had glimpsed something they were never meant to, and it had devoured them from the inside out. The Golden Tome hadn't granted them wisdom. It had stolen their time, leaving them trapped in this limbo, aging infinitely, yet never truly dying. I stumbled back, grasping for breath, my heart hammering in my chest. The whispers around me rose to deafening roar, and I felt someone reaching for me, unseen hands grasping my arms, my shoulders, my face. I was falling, and then I was back. Gasping, trembling, my hands dug into the damp earth of the museum garden. The tablet lay before me, now dark and still, its glow extinguished. The whispers had vanished. The night was quiet again, save for the distant chatter of my classmates, completely unaware what had just happened. I scrambled to my feet, my mind racing. Had I imagined it? Had I really left? Or had the Golden Tome simply shown me what was to come? I placed my glyph down on the ground and set it. The Golden Tome fought me every step of the way, but within an instant, The spiraling gold that crept up the glyph pulled the Golden Tome in, and he was mine. Professor Orion's eyes burned with frustration, the glow of the moon's casting jagged shadows across his face. Above us, the twin suns hung frozen in their eternal positions, bathing the world in a perpetual golden twilight. Time never truly moved on Nibiru, not like it did on other planets. Yet standing there in that ancient garden, I felt something shifting. The Golden Tome doesn't just show the future, Stella Ferris, Orion said, his voice edged with a rare urgency. It reshapes it. The words settled in my chest like cold stone. I tightened my grip on my satchel where the pyramid holding the captured glyph pulsed faintly. The whispers had stopped the moment I sealed it, but something inside me said it wasn't over. Not even close. Professor Orion exhaled sharply, his silver hair gleaming under the endless daylight. Do you have any idea why it was buried out here? Why it was never taken into the museum? I swallowed. I had wondered. The Golden Tome was unlike any glyph I had ever encountered, yet it had been left forgotten beneath an ancient tree, as if the world itself had tried to erase it, or maybe trap it. Orion's gaze was unrelenting. It wasn't abandoned, it was sealed, bound to this place so that no fool, could awaken it. He took a step closer, lowering his voice to a sharp whisper. And you didn't just uncover it, you bound it to yourself. A chill ran down my spine. Bound? I echoed. Orion's expression darkened. Do you feel it? And I did. Something was wrong. The air around me had changed. The ever-present warmth of the twin suns felt muted. The shadows of the three moons stretched too far. The garden's silence pressed in heavier than before, like the world was holding its breath. I had felt shifts in time before, but this was something deeper. I clenched my jaw. I can't handle it. Orion let out a sharp, humorous laugh. Handle it? You don't even know what it is. His eyes locked onto mine, cold and knowing. Tell me, Stella Ferris. What did it show you? I stiffened, because I had seen something. The moment my fingers had brushed the Golden Tome's surface, reality had fractured. A vision fleeting fractured, but real. I had glimpsed something I wasn't supposed to see, and the worst part, I couldn't remember all of it. Not fully, just pieces. The sky split in two, the twin suns flickering like dying embers, the three moons cracked and bleeding silver light. A city drowning in golden mist, its people frozen in time, and something else, watching. I sucked in a breath, shaking my head, but Orion saw the flicker of fear in my eyes. His expression hardened. It's already started, hasn't it? He murmured. I didn't answer, because deep down, I know the truth. The Golden Tome was mine to bear now, and whatever fate it had shown me, it was already set in motion. The air around us was thick with unspoken tension. Professor Orion paced in the garden, his long strides casting fleeting shadows under the light of the twin suns. The garden, usually a sanctuary of peace, felt distorted now, as though the very fabric of reality was strained. I could almost hear the hum of the Golden Tome, its energy pushing against the boundaries of time itself, just waiting to break free. I clutched my satchel close to my side, filling the pyramid inside pulse with an unearthly rhythm. The weight of its connection to me was undeniable now. When I had touched it earlier, it had claimed me, drawing me into its web of fate. But in this moment, I refused to accept it as only truth. Orion stopped pacing and turned to face me. The frustration on his face was palpable. You don't understand, Stella Ferris, he said, his voice growing darker. The Golden Tome isn't just a tool, it's an anchor. It holds the keys to the future, but it also binds you to a path that may not be your own. I swallowed hard, the words sinking deep. I had felt the pull of its vision, seen the terrible future it had shown me, a world that had fractured, its suns dimming, the people trapped in eternal despair. But what if I could change it? What if I could unravel what it had shown me? I stared at my glyph inside my bag, and for a moment I felt something different, a warmth, calming, steady, seeped into my chest. The fear that had gripped me when I first touched it has started to fade, replaced by a quiet resolve. Orion watched me, his gaze intense. "Do you feel it?" he asked. "The way the Golden Tome clings to you. It's already begun, Stella Ferris. It doesn't let go." "But what if I let go first?" I reached into my satchel and pulled the glyph out, feeling its heavy power thrumming beneath my fingers. I knew this glyph had a hold on me, but I wasn't going to let it control me, not anymore. The 3 moons overhead seemed to swirl, their pale light bending and warping like the edges of a torn page, the twin suns still blazing in their unyielding positions, but the air felt strangely still. I placed the glyph gently on the ground, my fingers still wrapped around it, but no longer felt its grip pulling at me. I closed my eyes, focusing on the rhythm of my breath, slowing my heartbeat. I wasn't going to fight the Golden Tome. I was going to understand it, to meet it on my terms. I refused to accept what it showed me. I whispered, my voice steady despite the chaos inside me. "I will choose my own path." A shudder ran through the pyramid, its pulsing light growing brighter, but I didn't flinch. I steadied myself and let go. Not of the Golden Tome itself, but of the fear that it would control me. Instead, I focused on something deeper, my own will. The sense of power that surged through me felt different now, not threatening, but empowering. A warm light burst from the pyramid, surrounding me like a cocoon. The distortion in the air slowed, and I could feel time stretching around me, bending at my command. I reached out mentally, finding the threads of fate the Golden Tome had woven. I pulled them gently, weaving them back together. The world around me seemed to soften, the cracked sky and my vision fading. The decaying city replaced itself with light, the cold mist dissipating into warmth, and somewhere deep within I felt the glyph's pulse shift. No longer cold and distant, it became something alive, breathing like a companion attuned to my thoughts. When I opened my eyes, the world around me had changed. The 3 moons now shimmered in harmony, their glow bathing the garden in a gentle light. The twin suns softened, casting golden rays over everything. The air was light, free from the weight of a future dread. I stood tall, not as someone bound to a vision of despair, but as a guardian of my own fate. Orion stood across from me, his face etched with disbelief. "You," he whispered, shaking his head in awe. "You tamed it." I nodded, the warmth of my own power thrumming through me. "No, Professor, I didn't tame it. I freed it." The Golden Tome, once a silent force of fate, now rested peacefully in the garden. Its glowing glyphs had softened, the harsh edges of its influence no longer pulling at me. I had chosen this. I had rewritten what had been shown to me, and in doing so, I had unlocked a new path. Orion stepped closer, the weight of what had just happened settling over us both. "You've changed the course of everything," he said quietly. "You've changed time." I smiled, feeling a surge of purpose. Not time, my future. And for the first time, I truly felt like I was the one in control of my destiny, the one who could reshape the world around me. The Golden Tome was no longer my burden. It was my ally. Whatever came next, I would choose it. The moment I placed the Golden Tome on the ground, everything around me shifted, as though the world itself had paused to watch. The golden garden's vibrant colors seemed to dull. For a brief instant, the air growing thick with expectation. My fingers were still lightly wrapped around the pyramid, and though it pulsed with energy, it no longer felt like a threat. It was something else. Something now waiting. Professor Orion's presence was like a shadow behind me, tense, as if waiting for the worst to unfold. But as I focused on the Golden Tome, a strange calm settled over me, guiding me to the present. I had came here to understand this power, not to be overwhelmed by it. The 3 moons hung motionless in the sky, casting long shadows across the earth. Their unusual eerie glow now felt like a distant comfort, as if they were aware of the decision I was making, And yet I didn't feel alone. The Golden Tome thrummed beneath my fingers, soft, persistent. I closed my eyes for a moment and breathed in deeply. Centering myself, I could feel the pulsing energy swirling around me, seeking to entangle me in its complex web. But this time I resisted the urge to flinch. Instead, I leaned into the sensation, allowing it to wash over me, pulling at the very threads of fate. I could feel the vision it had shown me, the city in ruin, the twin suns flickering out, the people frozen in time. But those were not my only possibilities. What if I change it? I murmured out loud. The words not directed at anyone in particular. It was a question that carried the weight of the unknown, the deep truth that I had never asked myself until now. Orion's voice cut through the air, raw with uncertainty. You cannot simply change the future, Stella Ferris. It doesn't work like that. I shook my head, resolute. I'm not changing it, Professor. I'm choosing it. Choosing how it unfolds. I'm not bound to what it showed me. The Golden Tome began to hum louder, its power pressing against me, urging me to submit to its will. But this time, I felt something different. A lightness, a rising energy within me, as though my will and the tome's power were no longer opposing forces, but rather two currents flowing together in harmony. I stood tall, shoulders squared, my chest rising and falling steadily with each breath. I can reshape this, I said, more firmly now. I don't have to follow the path it wants to set for me. I am the one who walks it. With a quiet resolve, I reached down to the Golden Tome, my fingers brushing its surface, and this time I didn't feel the pull of its immense power. Instead, I felt a gentle connection. It was as though the tome recognized me, acknowledged my choice. Slowly, I pressed my palm against the ancient surface. The energy surged, but rather than consuming me, it molded to my touch. I could feel the ancient magic at my fingertips, the intricate web of fate that stretched far beyond the garden, into the vast reach of Nibiru. But instead of allowing it to dictate my future, I began to gently tug at the threads, pulling them in new directions. It wasn't a forceful action, it wasn't a battle, it was more like a whisper, a soft shift, a guiding hand. The vision I had seen, those terrible glimpses of a world falling apart, began to dissipate, replacing with new images, softer ones. I saw a city bathed in warm golden light, with people laughing, walking through the streets. Unburdened by time, I saw the twin suns, no longer flickering but shining brightly, their warmth radiating across the land. I saw life, now not the barren, frozen world I had glimpsed before, but a world brimming with possibility. Orion's voice was a distant murmur, now barely reaching my ears. This isn't possible. But I didn't need his words anymore. The connection I felt with the tome was no longer a matter of control, but of understanding. We were aligned now, the Golden Tome and I. In a way I had never expected. It no longer sought to dominate me. It sought to collaborate. As I stood there, I could feel the world around me changing. The warmth from the twin suns became more pronounced, and the shadows of the three moons stretched towards the horizon, casting long, graceful shadows on the earth. It felt as though the very sky was holding its breath, waiting for the final shift to complete. When I opened my eyes again, the garden was no longer heavy with the weight of the inevitable doom. The air was clear, fresh, almost alive, and standing beside me, the Golden Tome pulsed softly, its energy now a gentle hum, like a heartbeat. I've changed it, I whispered, almost to myself, but I knew Professor Orion could hear me. I've changed everything. Orion was silent for a moment, his gaze fixed on the tome, now calm and restful. He took a cautious step toward me. You've rewritten your fate, he said quietly, as if testing the words. But do you understand what that means? I nodded, my chest swelling with the sense of purpose I had known I was capable of before. I do. It means I chose what happens next. I decide. The weight of his earlier warnings no longer felt pressing. The Golden Tome, once a harbinger of doom, was now a tool of choice. and it would be with me not to shape my destiny for me, but to help me shape it for myself. Orion studied me with a newfound respect, and for the first time I saw something else in his eyes, a hint of hope. The future is not set in stone, he murmured. You've proven that, Stella Ferris, but remember the true change comes with both the freedom to choose and the responsibility to see it through. I smiled, feeling the pulse of the Golden Tome once more, a quiet affirmation I know, and I'm ready. The future was no longer a place that haunted me. It was a canvas waiting for me to create something new, something beautiful. The world had settled. The tension that once crackled in the air like an impending storm had dissolved, replaced by an almost reverberant stillness. The Golden Tome no longer thrummed. With unchecked power, it rested beside me, its glow subdued, its energy no longer clawing at the fabric of reality. Professor Orion exhaled sharply, breaking the silence. I turned to him, expecting the usual sharp reprimand, cautionary words about my recklessness, my inability to understand what I had just done. But instead, he just stared. His expression, so often guarded, skeptical, was open for once, filled with something I had never seen from him before, astonishment. His silver brows furrowed, not in frustration, but in deep contemplation. He stepped forward slowly, his boots crunching against the grass. I spent my entire life studying glyphs, he murmured, almost to himself, cataloging them, fearing them. And yet, time and time again, he trailed off, shaking his head, as if the words he needed didn't yet exist. I swallowed, my fingers tightening around the satchel at my side. The pyramid holding the Golden Tome pulsed softly, no longer a force of something understood. I just listened, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't about control, it was about balance. Orion finished, his gaze sharp, as if locked on mine. That's what you do, isn't it? You don't conquer them, you don't imprison them, you find a way to align with them. I hesitated before nodding. I had never thought of it in those exact terms before, but it was true. The glyphs, no matter how wild, how untamable, had never been mere creatures to subdue. They were forces of nature, relics of an ancient world. And they didn't seek masters, they sought understanding. Orion let out a breathless chuckle, shaking his head by all logic. This should be impossible. The Golden Tome, he gestured to it, still settled at my feet. It doesn't bond, it doesn't yield. Scholars, adventurers, even the most seasoned glyphs catchers, no one has ever been able to contain it, let alone rewrite what it shows them. But you, he studied me, as if seeing me for the first time. You tamed it, as if it was waiting for you all along. A strange feeling stirred inside of my chest, pride, but also understanding. I had felt it, too. When I touched the tome, it hadn't fought against me the way it had fought others. It had tested me, yes, but in the end, it had chosen me as much as I had chosen to wield it. Orion folded his arms, his voice quieter now, more introspective. This isn't the first time either. His nightmare stag, the ashen wraith, the siren of the hollow lake, glyphs that should have torn you apart, and yet, each time you emerged not just unscathed, but with their loyalty. I met his gaze. Maybe glyphs don't need to be feared the way that we've always thought, I said. Maybe they don't need to be bound with chains or locked away in pyramids. Maybe they just need someone to hear them. Orion's lips parted slightly, his expression unreadable, then slowly he nodded. That, he murmured, is the most dangerous idea I have ever heard. I stiffened, ready for the argument, the pushback, but then his mouth curved just slightly into something that might have been the ghost of a smile, and the most brilliant. Warmth spread through my chest, a flicker of validation I hadn't realized I needed. The sky above remained unchanged, the twin suns still burning in their frozen position, the 3 moons still looming, but somehow everything felt different. Not because I had reshaped time or rewritten fate, but because for the first time I knew without a doubt, that I was meant for this. Me. Not just as a glyph catcher, not just as a seeker of lost knowledge, but as something new. A bridge between worlds. Professor Orion exhaled one last time, looking down at the Golden Tome before glancing back at me. Whatever path you're walking, Stella Ferris, the universe is waiting. I nodded, a slow smile creeping across my face. Then, let's give it something to watch. As I close this entry, the weight of the Golden Tome still lingers in my hands. Once untamable, once a force of beyond control, it now rests at my side, not as a master, but as a companion. Above Zelthar, the eternal watcher sees all. Does Nibiru's god recognize what I have done? That I have bent fate without breaking it? That I have rewritten what was thought to be unchangeable? Only time will tell. But for now, the Golden Tome is mine to wield, and the future is mine to shape. Goodbye now.